Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is David Tasker, and I'll be hosting today's TechGen Metals webinar. Today's session will focus on TechGen's exploration portfolio across Western Australia, the Northern Territory and New South Wales, while also covering this morning's announcement regarding the Blue Devil copper-gold-silver project. The company has just completed its first on-country heritage survey at Blue Devil, working closely with the Jaru people, and during that process identified new high-grade copper-gold zones. At the end of the presentation, we'll open the floor for Q&A. So please listen to the presentation, think up your questions and submit them using the button on your screen, and we will get through as many as we can at the end of the presentation. To talk us through the portfolio, recent exploration results and today's milestone, I'm joined by TechGen's Managing Director, Ashley Hood, and Technical Director, Andrew Jones. Gents, over to you.
Yeah, good morning, David, and thank you, listeners, for joining. Obviously, we put out some good news this morning. This presentation we did announce end of July, and we sort of went into diggers with this presentation. So it is our latest presentation, so I'll refer largely to this presentation and obviously what we announced this morning. Next slide. That's a corporate snapshot. This was pre the rights issue that we've got live at the moment. The rights issue that we have live, that closes on Tuesday, and we haven't extended that closing date, so that will definitely close on Tuesday. I think this morning's news has helped that. Today, the take-up has been exceptionally well with that rights issue, and we do look forward to closing it early next week. So those numbers on the screen about our corporate structure, obviously with the rights issue being a 9 for 10, it basically doubles those numbers, and we still obviously a very tight market cap or low market cap with tight shares on issue, so it'll be just under 300 million or just over 300 million shares on issue at the closure of the rights issue. Next slide, Dave. On the left is the board management. It's a very tight team. It's obviously myself, Ryan Maguire is our lawyer, and Andrew Jones, our technical director, geologist, and Ada, our company secretary of mining corporate. The gentlemen on the right are our technical advisors who work, excuse me, directly with the company. And obviously Russell Mortimer is a key one at the moment, obviously with our geophysics that we're working on two of our key projects. So Russell's largely working with us directly on these projects. Next slide, Dave. This short-term price catalyst was done a month ago, so there's been a few moving pieces here. We'll put an update out, a presentation out in a couple of weeks' time. Obviously, there's more news to come that we're working on that'll change. So, you know, the first one there is the heritage survey is now complete. That's all as announced this morning. So that is the first survey that we've done. Yeah, it was with Andrew and I were on the survey. We don't, you know, it all went well. We're just waiting on the report before we can announce the findings of that survey. Excuse me, as per the announcement. But yeah, look, it's going well, and we certainly have a fantastic relationship with the Jaru board and people. When you've got these relationships, they do take a while to build, and you know we have a fantastic one and endeavour to keep it that way.
And I guess what we did on that survey was to clear an area where we actually want to do drill a hole later on in the year, so that the area of EM conductor and the magnetic intrusion sitting underneath that EM anomaly was the area that we covered with the Jaru people, so that drilling program can go ahead later in the year. So yeah, that's pretty exciting. I guess the second catalyst here, Mount Boggola, heritage survey is due to happen later in September, which will then obviously move that project towards the drilling phase as well. And then, yeah, number 3, the drilling at Blue Devil. Number 4 on those catalysts, the drilling at Mount Boggola. And obviously number 5 and 6 are also drilling. Number 5, the John Bull project in New South Wales, managed by Novo Resources. And then our gold project just out of Kalgoorlie at number 6, Donna, where we recently got some air core drilling results.
Cash and gold. As these milestones and catalysts advance. As mentioned, we've got a steady news flow coming, and there'll obviously be updates as we go, including some updates next week. Next slide, please. The Kimberley Blue Devil Copper Gold Silver project, that's one that we've been working on for a while. TechGen owns that 100% outright. We pegged that, more specifically, Andrew pegged that late last year. Previous explorers, SEPA and Spartan Exploration, have held that. A lot of the work previously done has been chasing Mississippi type mineralisation, a lead zinc type of mineralisation on the Easter project. These targets that we've generated through airborne EM, expert EM flying the 12.5 Hertz system. We've identified that EM target. Now it is large. It's got multi-layers. There's a mag intrusion underneath it with the EM wrapping around it. So, clearly looks like an intrusion type style of mineralisation, and we'll talk to that in a second. So that's the area that we have recently just done our survey on, and obviously that's our high priority. And further just to the east prior to the target is where the recent copper's been found, so that'll be a new focus in the short term. But yeah, the previous explorers, this particular target, it's never been drill tested. There has been systematic geochemistry done, and all of that points to an intrusion type mineralisation with those other elements, pathfinder elements, Andrew.
Yeah, and I guess from the regional airborne magnetics data that was available, you couldn't see the intrusion, but it was only when we flew the airborne EM across the whole project area. Airborne magnetics was also collected during that survey, and it was pretty obvious from that airborne magnetics data that there was a magnetic high. That magnetic high sits underneath the 3 conductors, EM conductors, and we're interpreting that magnetic high to be an intrusion. It's a circular feature sitting underneath. We don't think it outcrops. We certainly haven't seen it at the surface, but yeah, it's pretty impressive to have that sitting underneath the EM conductors. At surface, there's, as Ashley said, there's stream sediment, soil, and rock chip, copper and gold anomalism, and also getting some of the other pathfinder elements, antimony, tellurium, bismuth, tungsten as well, which are possibly indicating an intrusion-related gold system style model for this project. So yeah, we're pretty excited with what we found. When we flew the airborne EM, we didn't know if we'd actually find any conductors, and we found 3 very strong late-time conductors, all sitting basically next to each other and sitting on top of this magnetic intrusive body. So yeah, really very exciting outcome from the work.
It is exciting. And so the EM conductor is obviously the primary target at the moment. Obviously, when we do drill it, will be a deep target. We've applied for ES funding through the mines department. I think Andrew's just completed that. So we are applying for government assistance with that. It'll be a deep hole, 800 metres plus. Primary target on the EM is approximately 150 to 200 metres, so it's relatively shallow. So it is exciting to be chasing a shallower target. The mag intrusion and what's related below, we'll be testing both targets with the one hole. Next slide, please. On the screen there, we've got a list of copper, gold and silver historic rock chips from around the place. This morning's high-grade samples aren't on that list, but it certainly trumps our previous 50.5 result. Yeah, it's pleasantly surprised. We didn't expect numbers that high. It's certainly on a new target on our radar. It's probably 1 kilometre or 2 from that main magnetic intrusion. Is it related? Look, we hope so. It would be nice. We won't know until we drill it, but it's certainly given us a short-term focus while we work through the next stages of the project, which would be through the mines department, is the granting process. So yeah, that's sort of out of our hands, and the next stage of that project prior to the work that we do on country is the granting of the license. So it's probably, I'd be having a guess at a few months away, two months approximately, and then post that we're applying for the program of work and drilling hopefully by later in the year. The Kimberley will be, it is subject to a wet season, so hopefully we get it done by the end of the year, but that's certainly what, we're pulling all the stops we can to get that one drilled. Next slide, anything more on the other? Mount Boggola. So this is a project that we've got news coming, and it's one that's certainly come of late to a priority for us. It is a granted license, and again, like all at Mount Blue Devil, we do own it 100% outright. The project's previously been explored by majors. It's previously been Newcrest, Northern Star had done a lot of soils, and we've modelled that soils up, and that was part of our targeting, and I'll talk to that in a second. Goldfields had previously held the project. The main thing is, for us, an exciting part, the drilling that Newcrest did in 1990, the drill holes, that 2D cartoon that we've got on the top right-hand slide there, that's being modelled at the moment in 3D, along with all the Newcrest and Northern Star work. And that news will come out next week, but that's certainly shaping up to be more interesting than we probably can see on the screen there. But the previous drilling has fallen short by Newcrest in the 90s, as I mentioned, probably 10 to 20 metres short. We are seeing in those logs there copper at the end of holes. And it's certainly exceptionally encouraging on the surface. There's 20 or more copper gossans at surface. It's a relatively shallow target. The previous drilling finished at about 110, 120 metres. Our target starts at about 150. That's a pretty large target. There's a 300-400 metres depth to this IP anomaly. Again, we're applying for EIS funding on that and heritage surveys are being booked as we speak. So we'll announce that next week once we get dates confirmed. And certainly this is most likely our next drill target.
Yeah, it's a pretty exciting project. Obviously, at Blue Devil as well, we've got high-grade rock chips, but at Mount Boggola as well, we've got similarly high-grade rock chips. I think the peak copper rock chip is 48.7% copper and about 44 grams per tonne gold at surface in quartz veins. So pretty exciting. It looks like there's 3 or 4 of these zones that are parallel to each other, running in a northwest-southeast orientation. And interestingly, at this project as well, there's an interpreted intrusion just sitting to the southwest of where we're seeing the surface mineralisation and the IP chargeability targets. So yeah, Blue Devil and Mount Boggola, in terms of geological models, are actually a little bit similar, both with an intrusion sitting there. Blue Devil has EM conductors, which we don't have here, but here we've got IP chargeability, very strong chargeability features, which are correlating with the surface anomalism. Interestingly, Newcrest had drilled basically just underneath some of the copper bearing gossans, and I think it was like 7 or 8 out of their 14 drill holes had log chalcopyrite, which is a primary copper sulfide mineral, in those drill holes. From the work we've modelled up, it looks like the drilling that they completed was a little bit shallow to intersect the IP chargeability target, which is in the top right-hand corner, the big pink zone, which we'll be drilling into later in the year to test that. So yeah, pretty exciting. High-grade rock chips with known chalcopyrites, so primary mineralisation in previous drilling, but that drilling hasn't actually tested the main targets that we've identified.
On the back of that success, with the IP targets that we've got, given the mineralisation at surface, that was largely the geochem data has been independently verified and modelled by Steve Sugston, but Northern Star completed that data in about 2015. So I guess it was that level and that confidence in that data that took us back out to Mount Boggola and decided to do an IP survey. In about just after listing in 2021, we did fly VTEM and tested those targets to the north of the project. Those targets we're chasing VMS copper, but we ended up in those particular ones, it was a graphitic shale. So the fact that that VTEM hasn't shown up at where these targets are, so there's a level of confidence that type of material that we don't want to see is not kicking around this part of the project. So there's extra bit of confidence for us when we do drill this. What is this target and where's this copper come from? Next slide there. So basically, this is that same IP target. On the left there, we've got chargeability. On the right, we've got resistivity. So when both of those marry up, it's just an exceptionally confident target. And the photos at surface are from around the BM1 and BM2 EM IP targets. As we've mentioned, BM1 has attempted to be drilled before, but all the holes are pulled up short. the BM2 target's never been drilled before, and probably some of the highest copper, gold, and antimony rock chips are sitting above that target. And as mentioned, next week there'll be more news on the advancement of this project moving forward. As Andrew mentioned, it is a potential intrusive type target, and a comparison could be the Havieron target, and again Newcrest drilled that initially in 1990, and I think copper prices around, gosh, I did write it down. It was about $1.20 a US pound, and gold at the time was $386. So since the majors have been and gone, the share price, well, not the share price, the metals price has gone 100 times. Basically, it's gone, and also the electrification and the use for copper is, it's tripled, and it's a different metal now. We need it for greening, whereas before it was just a copper electrical sort of industrial metal. But yeah, it's the demand is outstripping supply now. The copper price is healthy now. Back to the Havieron story. So that was another target that was sort of missed. Where I like Mount Boggola a lot is with the Havieron target, because it was deep. It was over 400 meters deep. We're talking about 100 to 150 here, and the deeper target at Havieron, it's pretty hard to compare. They're in different belts, but I guess that style of mineralisation, the intrusive type, is the similar part. But we do have a lot of mineralisation at surface sitting above these targets, so it does strengthen the target and give us a little bit more confidence moving into drill it. Next slide, David. Andrew, Blue Boar.
Blue Boar, it's an interesting project that we have an option agreement over. It's not granted currently, but sitting in the southern part of the Northern Territory, close to the border with South Australia. The reason we picked up the project was a historic water bore drilled in 1900, so yeah, quite a while ago, was logged geologically as containing several hundred meters of blue rock types, blue shale, blue limestones. But that drill hole was never assayed. It was a government water bore, so we only actually have the geological log of that hole. And now there's no material from that drilling sitting at the surface there. The area of the water bore has been concreted off, and so you can't access any of those old chips to assay them. Anyway, the project also has a very high water sample that was taken that was anomalous in copper and arsenic as well. So anyway, it's an interesting project. Quite a lot of geologists have come up and talked to us about it at different conferences where we've had a booth, and saying it looks very interesting. Some of the work done by Geoscience Australia and CSIRO have indicated that area sits within areas prospective for sediment-hosted mineralisation. But yeah, really we're just waiting to get that project granted, and then we'll start doing some on-ground exploration on that.
Yeah, it is exceptionally interesting. If the model is right, it's another, we are chasing large copper systems predominantly here. So all three targets, will certainly have a scale potential. There's not a lot of junior explorers out there focusing solely on copper. We're fortunate all our copper projects appear to have gold or silver and antimony associated, so a bit of a multi commodity front there, but it is primarily copper we're targeting, and this is another one that has certainly got scale. It is in the Northern Territory, as Andrew mentioned, and waiting for granting process there. Got a 5-year option on it, so there is no rush on that sense, but certainly one we do want to get out. We do have heritage surveys we're trying to book in at the moment prior to getting it granted and then prior to drilling. So this is obviously a high priority, but it's certainly one that we're going to look forward to hopefully getting on the ground at the early first half of next year. But we've certainly got Mount Boggola and Blue Devil to get on with this year. Next slide, Dave. New England Origin, we've got the John Bull project. That's a earn-in joint venture option with Novo. Just working through at the moment, trying to get the drilling permits finalised. We've had 2 drilling programs there in the last couple of years, so it's just a formality. I guess for that one there, it's followed Novo's announcement. So we've had a great relationship with them and do look forward to that. We discovered that hole probably 2 years ago, late 2022. But our first drill hole was over 60 meters at just over 1 gram from surface. So very large orogenic type system potential there. Next slide, Dave. Donna.
Donna's located just to the northeast of Kalgoorlie. It's a pretty incredible location, sitting between two previously mined open pits. It's got the Mayday North gold mine to the north and the Penny's Find gold deposit to the south. So yeah, we're sitting in between those along similar structural trends. There's a lot of previous gold in the drilling that has been done by previous explorers. And yeah, we just think now we've just completed an air core drilling program to follow up some soil geochemistry targets. So that was sort of on the periphery around the edge of the project where no drilling had been done before. But in the central area of the project, there's quite a lot of targets from the previous drilling that have never been followed up. So yeah, we certainly think there's potential there. There's a lot of smoke in the area. You've got a mine to the north and one to the south. So yeah, I think our next step will be to get out there and do some RC drilling to test these primary gold targets, hopefully later in the year.
Next slide, Dave. Exploration investment highlights. Yeah, we've just spoken through all of those. So Mount Boggola's, it's probably mentioned first there. That'll be the first one to get a rig on it. High grade copper at surface. Untested IP targets close to surface. Three major companies have held the project prior. I guess all of their data is pointed towards this IP area. Given the excitement and the encouragement that we've got of these IP targets, we're actually going to go do another 4 or 5 lines extending this IP to the west and southwest, where there's additional soil geochem targets and also some previous Newcrest holes that we haven't done IP over. So hopefully by the time we get out there doing a heritage surveys and drilling later in the year, that we've got more than just BM1 and BM2 to drill. Hopefully we've got a few more to drill, but yeah, certainly given the encouragement of what we've got, hopefully drilling more holes there. Blue Devil, as mentioned, that's we're honoured and stoked that we've done the first heritage survey pending the report as mentioned. So confident that that'll be coming through in the next couple of weeks, and then following the heritage report, following by the granting by the government, and then timing with the wet season, drilling that later in the year. And John Bull, yeah, that's over to Novo on that one, but yeah, hopefully we're drilling that one in the very short term. Next slide, Dave. That timeline needs updating, but yeah, there's a few catalysts there we've already ticked off. Otherwise, we're on schedule for those timelines. So heritage and drilling, and at Mount Boggola, probably in the timeline we haven't added, but we are going to do more geophysics on both projects. So, and they'll be kicking off probably early as next week. So we'll update this presentation and put it out later next week once we've made more announcements. Next slide, Dave. As a disclaimer to cover what we've just spoken about, I think that brings us to an end there of the presentation, David.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Ashley and Andrew. Great presentation. Clearly a lot going on. Shareholders love news flow, and there's a lot of that to come. So we watch with interest. Now, I did say at the start, we do have time for Q&A, and a number of questions have come through. So if you don't mind, we'll jump straight into it. And a reminder, if you do have a question, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen to submit the question. I'll run through those, and if it makes sense to group them together, I will. Otherwise, we will read out as many as we possibly can in the next sort of 15 minutes or so. Okay, so first question, when do you expect drilling to commence at Blue Devil now that the heritage survey is completed?
Good question. That's out of our hands. That's now in the mine department process. We like to call it a formality. Can't get it granted without a heritage protection agreement. We've had that in place for over a month now. The survey certainly just speeds up the program of work approval once it's granted. So a couple of months' time would be my guess there on the granting, and then drilling shortly after. Yeah, and as I've mentioned, it is the Kimberley and it does get wet. So hence we have other projects to be drilling later this year, Mount Boggola and Donna, but it's clearly a priority given the scale of that target. We've never brought a bigger target to the market than Blue Devil. It's clearly supported copper and gold, silver mineralization at surface. It's the EM is 2.5 kilometers, so it is a big target, and probably equally as 300, 400, 500 meters deep, extending is that EM target. I can get carried away and talk about that for a while, David, but yeah, that's later this year is our aim for Blue Devil. Mount Boggola sooner.
I've got a couple of questions here I'm going to group together, and one uses some terminology from the 80s by the looks. Blue Devil is a rad name for the prospect. Can you speculate on why the market reacted so strongly to the news released today? And I'm going to group another question here. How significant are surface grades like 52% copper in the context of global exploration?
Yeah, it's very significant. It's obviously supergene enrichment at surface. It has come from somewhere. It's not the only place on the project that's carrying over 50% copper. I guess for me, it's the style of mineralization. It's the iron associated with it, sulfur association. And these gossans, they're not sedimentary absorbed copper. It's come from a source. So the fact that we do have a big target nearby, and that's the love affair with this project. Has it come from there? Has it? Where is it come? Where has it come from? It's a significant grade of copper. The fact it's associated with sulfur and phosphorus and other elements like that, it does support intrusive style of mineralization. And it was telling me that this morning. So yeah, it just adds a lot of weight to that target. It is high, we know it, and yeah, we're certainly proud of it. It's one that we do hope to be drilling, and yeah, look forward to updating the market as we progress.
And I guess interestingly, the previous highest rock chip at Blue Devil, I think just over 50% taken by Spartan exploration in the past. I think that rock chip sample is a couple of kilometres away from where this rock chip sample that was released this morning is. But one thing we noticed when we're out there doing the heritage survey, and I guess when we've been out there previously, there's a lot of very large quartz veins in the area. And as you seem to get closer to the EM conductors, the intensity and the number of those quartz veins seems to increase. So it's a pretty exciting project. There's still work to be done there, but everything we're seeing at the moment is certainly ticking a lot of exploration boxes.
Even a month or two ago, we actually announced through Southern Geoscience, we did some satellite mineralization studies. So it's just something different and left field to look at this target area. And that also pointed to the Blue Devil target area as on satellite mapping and satellite structures and mineralization of a unique area different to the area around the entire tenement area. So, everything that we seem to throw at Blue Devil, everything just generally keeps taking us back to this target. So, yeah, it's.
And then I guess, David, with respect to your other question, I don't think we expected the share price to do anything like what it's done so far today.
No, look, I think the market's starting to realise that the target's large and it's real, and the mineralisation supports it. So, but we are fortunate not to have one of these targets. We actually have two. So Mount Boggola and Donna. Sorry, not Donna. Mount Boggola and Blue Devil kind of sit 50-50 with us at the moment. One's large and super exciting with that grade. Sort of trumped us a bit this morning. Yesterday when the results came through. But Mount Boggola, yeah, I guess given that the major companies, they keep going into areas for a reason. And yeah, Mount Boggola was certainly the first company to do geophysics there as well. So to find that target and notice that it is falling short of Newcrest drilling in 90, which I appreciate they have their models and why they stopped. Gold price was certainly pretty low in comparisons to today. It just wouldn't have fitted their models, but certainly fits our models today, and do look forward to it. Next question, Dave.
Can you explain how the heritage clearance and agreement with the Jaru people supports project development? And there's another question here on a similar line, is what's involved in the heritage surveys?
I'll answer that one. So before we can do on-country surveys, I guess largely anywhere in Australia, you need a heritage protection agreement. And prior to that, there's a right to negotiate process. And it's basically looking after country. And it's our obligation to form these relationships, and it sets it in stone that we work with the traditional custodians. And in the Kimberley with the Giroux group, we're exceptionally fortunate that things have gone exceptionally well. So, and I guess the process of the survey, we walk the country and the targets that we want to explore, with drilling, with a group of traditional owners as well as the anthropologists and archaeologists that map these projects out, from a traditional owner point of view, and just make sure that we're not, we've got a lot of responsibilities here, and we just make sure that we're looking after the country, basically not disturbing any artifacts or anything like that, and hence we have to wait for the final reports for the final go ahead on that, and that's all cleared. So, but so far we're certainly comfortable with how things are progressing, and we do have a great relationship.
And how does that relationship support project development?
You can't develop you can't access a license without these relationships and without these agreements in place. It's, as you can say, it's our obligation to make sure that we're not disturbing the country, but it's a partnership that we have with our with Giroux or any custodians, whoever's country it is. Yeah.
Now, you made the comment that Halls Creek origin is world class. Can you expand on that?
So I guess there are several, world-class mineral deposits in that part of the world. The Argyle diamond mine being one, the Savannah nickel mine being another. So there are big deposits known in there. There are not big copper-gold deposits known, but there are some copper and gold deposits in the region. So yeah, it's an exciting area. Where the Blue Devil project is, there have been previous indications of mineralisation, but we just don't feel that the work had been done to identify targets. So yeah, although it has been explored previously, as Ashley said, the actual rock units where these EM conductors and are interpreted intrusive body are, there's been no drilling ever done in that unit within that project area or the surrounding area. So yeah, there's certainly a lot of potential there.
Yeah, not unsurprisingly, we've got a few questions on Blue Devil. What are the next technical steps at Blue Devil?
Next technical steps, the target that we've got isn't going to change. We may do some gravity over it, I guess, just to bolster the strength of that target. Some of these, obviously the newest rock chips that we've got, we'll probably do some IP over that, just in case it is an unrelated to the main Blue Devil system, if it's a separate one, or if that is the primary target. So I guess some gravity work and some IP work is the next technical steps of the project.
And how does Blue Devil compare with the other projects in the portfolio? Obviously a few projects there, but how does it compare to Mount Boggola and Donna?
Look, Blue Devil and Mount Boggola are similar. They're copper-gold/antimony silver targets. They're both brand new targets. The targets that we have are both untested. So there's some similarities with those two. The copper dominant with the mineralisation that we're seeing at surface, whereas Donna's a pure gold play in the Goldfields. Given the gold market at the moment, it's a nice project to have, especially close to Kalgoorlie. Then we'll be doing, as I mentioned, doing exploration later this year. But our focus is on these two intrusive copper targets.
And what is the long-term vision for TechGen at Blue Devil and Mount Boggola across the broader exploration portfolio?
The vision's always, when you're chasing these type of targets, is finding a samphire, for example, type of copper discovery. There hasn't been a major copper discovery made in Australia for quite some time, and that may be one of the last major significant ones. So that's a long time. BHP put out a lot of announcements on Twitter and LinkedIn just about the shortage of copper discoveries this one, and we're fortunate to coming into the market with two major targets in our portfolio, and I think they would be major targets in anyone's portfolio. Just the grades that we're seeing at surface, we keep mentioning it, the grades are exceptional. The targets are, they're multi-layers of, geophysics. It's just not one level of geophysics. There's multiple layers of geophysics, plus there's multiple layers of geochemistry. So, yeah, I guess the TechGen's medium-term game is obviously if we can turn one of these into a discovery, we're all of a sudden not an exploration company, a development company. That's our game. Absolutely, is a technical success. We've had some technical successes, but to have an economic success would be outstanding. That's what we're aimed to deliver.
Last couple of questions. A good one here. Waratah in New South Wales are successfully exploring on the margins of the intrusive complex. Do you endorse or go along with the idea that ore bodies can be missed by only drilling the intrusions?
I don't know, Andrew.
Possibly. I guess, with at the Blue Devil project, for example, initial drill hole that we have planned will drill through the easternmost EM conductor and will drill on into the intrusion underneath. Now, obviously that intrusion hasn't been tested and the EM conductor hasn't been tested. So I guess we'll see what that drill hole comes up with, and then make a plan from that. I guess the people we've talked to have said, don't just drill the EM conductor, make sure you test this intrusion, even though it is obviously a little bit deeper than the EM conductors, just to make sure. Now, I guess at Mount Boggola, it's a little bit of a different story. Although there is an intrusion there, that intrusion is a little bit further away from where we know that there's copper and gold mineralization at surface and from where the IP chargeability targets are. So I guess at the moment, we're not prioritising drill testing that intrusion. We're more prioritising drilling the chargeability and geochemical targets. But as Ashley said, we're going to do some more ground geophysics at Mount Boggola, and that geophysics will now head towards covering the intrusion area as well. So although we don't have any surface mineralisation indications over that intrusion at Mount Boggola yet, we'll see what the geophysics turns up to.
Yeah, at Mount Boggola, that's a good question. Obviously, the primary target, the walk-up target is the EM. There'll be other GChem targets we're dual testing, and also the coincident resistivity target. I mean, as much as they are married up together, but there is offsets in that, so we'll be testing both the IP and the resistivity targets and the GChem. So yeah, it's certainly one, and there'll be deep holes, like 300-400 meter holes. So certainly won't be leaving any questions after we drill it.
Question here in terms of other discoveries. Has there been any other copper gold discoveries close to any of these targets?
Not close to these targets.
No, and I guess, as Ashley alluded, that I guess in our own mind, we hope to find a DeGrussa style deposit, which was quite a rich copper gold deposit discovered by Sandfire, although that's not the mineralization model we're chasing here. But I guess a similar deposit possibly to what we're chasing at Blue Devil is the Havieron copper gold discovery by Greatland Gold, made up in the Paterson province. And so that was quite a recent discovery. And also the Winu copper gold deposit discovered also in the Paterson province by Rio Tinto. So both Havieron and Winu are in the Paterson province. There's no recent discoveries in either the area of Mount Boggola or Blue Devil. So we're hoping that first discovery will be us.
And both of those discoveries you talk about, Winu and Havieron, are both in the Paterson's province. But given all the majors in that belt, there has been no other discovery since those two in that belt, given and the amount, those significant discoveries. So they're isolated and they're not easy to find. And hopefully, we're the first in the Ashburton and the Kimberley to find these major copper systems. And there's certainly a lot of indicators pointing to our particular target. So, watch your space on those.
Some people might be getting a little bit ahead of themselves, but I'll ask the question anyway. How are you able to protect against potential takeover approaches? And can you talk about the support of major shareholders?
The takeover one's an interesting one. They're only sort of on the table post discovery, and I'm just trying to think of some examples. But at the moment, yeah, it is pure exploration. I don't think anyone would be wanting to entertain that now, even with the high grade rock chips and the share price increase today is supportive of what we're doing. We need to drill 50, 100 meters of East copper mineralization in multiple holes and prove that these attractive systems are mineralized. And depending on that, if you can get your negotiated takeovers and you get your aggressive takeovers, it's different ways, but it's going to be a nice problem to have. And any drill hole that we do find that is mineralized, it'll be a pretty quick drill out in the sense that we'll be throwing as many meters and money at the targets as we can. We already spend a lot of money in ground too. It's saying for the shareholders, we are known as aggressive explorers, and this really proves that. We've got a large spend ratio in the ground, and that's not going to change. And to that point, Andrew and I actually do get in the field and do a lot of the work ourselves when we can.
Last question, funding. You mentioned rights issue underway. Firstly, how is that going? When's it going to close? Results of that, but then the greater funding position. Do you have the readies for the work you want to do?
Yeah, we do. So the funding's underway at the moment, and as I mentioned earlier, that closes Tuesday next week. That's underwritten by Cumulus Wealth and Andra Finance. So we've got Marco and Sean backing us there, and that's underwritten. So there's $2.5 million to come in that rights issue. The potential placement at the back end, we've got roughly just over $500,000 in the bank. So at the end of it all, mid next, within a week's time, we probably have around $3 million roughly at the bank. And that's certainly to cover the runway on this, that money, depending on how successful we are, but it's a 12 to 18 month runway pending a discovery, and that money goes quickly, but that's a great problem to have. So funding's certainly been put away as we speak, and it's good timing with the progress of these projects, and today's announcement speaks to it.
Well, that brings us to a close. You've answered all the questions. You've taken them all on and dealt with them appropriately. So thank you both, not just for the presentation, but for fronting up and answering all the questions that were thrown at you by shareholders and viewers of this webinar today. So to Ashley and Andrew, thank you.
Thanks, David, and thanks to the listeners. Yeah, we do appreciate it.
And thanks everyone who joined us today. TechGen continues to build momentum across its portfolio, and today's Blue Devil update highlights the exciting potential within the company's projects. A replay of this webinar will be made available, and you can also view the full announcement from today and the investor presentation on the company's website. We appreciate your time and look forward to keeping you updated as the story progresses. Thanks, everybody.